thrown in the deep end, that's often the best way to learn.
What can and should become your priority?
I got poached into another organization, was the CEO there.
Let's talk about overall human resource, right?
We don't get our team to buy into the change that we want to see as a leader, it's never going to happen.
What is that balance, if that balance even exists?
Too much empathy, not enough accountability.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my podcast, and today we have amazing Trudy. Trudy, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about what you do?
Thank you, Nazmul, and thank you for having me on the podcast. So Trudy McDonald is my name. I founded and run an organization called Talent Code HR, and I set that up 13 years ago, and it really plays to my passion, which is helping other founders and business leaders grow their organizations, helping set them up to thrive and to become high performance organizations.
That's fantastic. There are different ways we can tackle the whole thing, but I would love to know a few things from you, and I'm sure the listeners would love to learn a few things from you. So two different things. One, let's talk about how you thrived as a founder yourself, and can we also touch upon the things that usually people struggle with when it comes to human resources, right? So let's take one thing at a time. Let's talk about you as a founder. Tell me, like, how did the whole thing started, and where are you right now? And meanwhile, what are the things that you have learned? A few things that you might want to share with us.
Yeah, that's great. I'd be delighted to. So I think the condensed history of me might be worth sharing and of interest to your leaders because it really takes me to where I am today. So I've got a background in organizational psychology, and very quickly when I finished all those years of study, those 6 years of study, I fell into the startup space. So in the early days of my career, I like to describe it that I was over promoted beyond my level of competence. I was leading teams very quickly. I was at the starting place of startup companies, and organizations were building underneath me. Incredible early career experience. And as many of the listeners would appreciate, when you're thrown in the deep end, that's often the best way to learn. But with those startup companies, I had the opportunity to get involved in one in Sydney, and that was a human resource consulting business that was sold after 18 months. So this incredible whirlwind journey. That then took my new husband and I, so we'd only just been recently married. We then moved
Congratulations.
to the United States, and we ended up there for 5.5 years, acquiring companies and growing this incredible business. And that was really the formation of my exposure to large organizations in the US, what it meant to be a high performance organization, and really getting exposure to incredible thought leaders. With that company eventually sold as well, and I came back to Australia at that point with a one-year-old in tow, my husband and we decided that, you know what, we've had these 2 startup experiences. This is what I'm really passionate about. Let's set up our own business. But very quickly, I got poached into another organization, was the CEO there. It ended up reporting back to the US business that I had left, and then after all of that short stint in retail, fashion retail, which is something I would have never imagined, as the director of human resources. And then I set up this business 13 years ago. So I think with all of that, one of the things that I've really learnt over the years is from my early days, I was working long, long hours. For anyone who's been involved in founding a company or startups, I was literally working 7 days a week. And I look back now and compare it to the mindset of people in the workforce and our ways of working and hybrid and flexible work arrangements. It just would not fly in this day and age. And it doesn't seem that long ago, but that was the life that I lived. And one of the things I reflect on is how easy it is to fully immerse yourself in the business, and there's a price for that. And the price and the sacrifice that I made was, in reality, and I'm ashamed to say this, but work came first. It was my biggest priority. Second were my children, and over the years I ended up having two children. Third was my husband. He wasn't very happy about that. Fourth was my family, my extended family, and fifth was me. And I think it's really interesting to reflect on that because it was actually upside down to what it needed to be, and over the years, one of the things that's really helped me thrive is surrounding myself with other leaders and mentors who could help me put things in perspective and help me recognize the importance of balance in life. And you can't be single dimensional. It's the richness of the multi dimensions of your life that not only make you a better leader, but actually make the journey sustainable.
Wow. Wow. What a career. Oh my God. That sounds amazing. I know how you talked about was your number one priority, and then maybe things could be a little different. Here's what I think, and I can be absolutely wrong, by the way. I have seen often that it's so hard to get to that thing that we think about, like work-life balance. I don't know if it actually exists. Maybe it does. Again, I can be wrong. But what I have seen over and over again is that it's like this, maybe. Sometimes what work can and should become your priority, and sometimes if that's going okay, then the family can become a priority. I listen to Naval Rabnikant, and I really follow him. Um, and one thing that he talked about was how we think about, oh, we should be running a marathon. Like, hey, let's work 5 days a week, and 2 days off, 5 days a week, 2 days off, something like that. But in his opinion, and somehow it matched with my lifestyle as well, he said, in his opinion, maybe it's a sprint, and take as much break as you want, and then another sprint, and take as much break as you want. Like if I get into momentum, I have seen it again and again that I love being in that zone. That can
Yes.
be work, that can be me enjoying my time, but I love that zone. So anyway, long the short, I know what you're saying. At the same time, I'm still figuring it out. You definitely have more experience than I do, but I'm still figuring it out. Like what is that balance, if that balance even exists? Yeah, to that, can now because you have this new realization, can you talk about what can be the right approach in your opinion? Like what can be better for any founder who's listening to us? Like what would be your advice for them to say, hey, you know what? Um, this one advice really I could resonate with her, and I think from now on I should be following this.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I discovered a framework a number of years ago, and I've been implementing this on a quarterly basis with my team for many, many years ago. And to be honest, it's been a game changer for me. So pre-COVID, and COVID changed everything, right? I think we all know that.
Obviously.
But pre-COVID, I was working literally 7 days a week still. So it wasn't that long ago. However, and in the lead up to COVID, I managed to get myself back to working 3 days a week, and that was incredible as a CEO, as a founder. Number 1, it was flexible work arrangements that were a little bit unheard of back then, very normal now. But secondly, I got the appropriate balance that I wanted at this stage of my life, and listeners, a bit of an indication, I'm 52 this year, so that's roughly where I am in my life. So this is what it looks like. It's a simple analysis that, if done regularly, can actually shift things for you significantly. And this is what it looks like. Every 90 days, I would sit down with my team and ask them, what's the great work that we are each individually doing? Now, the definition of great work is work that's adding future value to our business. So it might be things such as working on strategic priorities or improving processes or introducing automation, which means that we're going to be more efficient, or developing new strategic relationships. That would be the definition of great work. And for each of us, we would share that, and that would look a little different given the context of our roles. We then ask ourselves, what's the good work that we're doing? Now, the definition of good work is it's adding operational value. It's the day-to-day transacting, it's keeping the wheels turning. So it might be things such as, I'm making sure I've got a sales pipeline. I'm making sure that my team is being held accountable to deliver on what they need to deliver. I'm maintaining relationships with our existing customers. They would all be examples of good work. It's part of my job, is what I need to do. Then it gets interesting. The next category is, what's the poor work that I'm doing? And there's an acronym, WOMBAT. So I would encourage my team to go wombat hunting. And what WOMBAT stands for, it's a waste of money, bandwidth, and time. So what are the wombats that we are spending our time on? Now, if you're spending your time in these on these wombats or in poor work, they obviously need it's stuff that needs to be done, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. But the key question here, and this is important, is it the best use of my time? So for me as a founder or a CEO, is this the best use of my time, or could somebody else be doing this in the company? Should I be delegating it to someone else? Could I be automating this? Could I be outsourcing this? Or could I just stop doing it? And the classic case is I spend hours every week compiling these reports that nobody ever analyzes or reads. Let's just stop doing it. It's a wombat, right? And you will have a list of wombat, and your teams will have a list of wombat. So that's the poor category. And then the last category is what's missing. Now, if you can really start to shift your mindset to ask yourself, what does great look like? Not good, but great. What does great look like for the company? What does the great look like for me as a founder? And this takes into account your whole life. What does great look like? And for everybody else in the company, you can then start to identify what's missing. And that's the last category. Now, in doing that analysis of the work that we're doing every 90 days, it would lead to just one action every quarter. And the action would be what's one wombat that I can get rid of? And usually that would mean making space for something that's missing. And it is a marathon in a way, because I like to think about this as this ongoing journey. Every 90 days, get rid of a wombat, put in something that's missing. Now, for me, pre-COVID, getting rid of all those wombats meant I managed to get balance back in my life. I went from working 6, 7 days a week down to 3 days a week. But then COVID happened, and like most leaders, we rolled up our sleeves and we got back in, and I'm back on that journey again now to getting things back in balance.
Wow. I love that analogy. So full-time consultant. At the same time, I have my own agency, and in that agency, we have about 43 full-time people. So this is a fantastic idea for my next rock. I'm definitely doing it as one of my next projects or rocks for the next quarter. I love it.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. This was so helpful for me. And I love this simplicity of it. You know how you say that, pick one, just one wombat, right? Definitely doing it. Thank you so much. Um,
yeah.
now let's talk about overall human resource, right? And before that, can I ask you this? Like, what kind of companies or people work with you right now? Just so that everybody also understands, like, what do you do and who should get in touch with you?
Yeah, fantastic. So, our passion and our purpose as an organization is to help organizations thrive, to help them be great by getting the people side of the business right. So, we love to work with organizations who have the aspiration to be a high performance organization. And I think what's really interesting is pre COVID, a lot of organizations would have described themselves as a high performing culture, but now they would describe themselves as being comfortable. And I think that's quite interesting. So the size of organization we work with startups right through to large organizations. It's really about the mindset of the leaders. And the mindset that we will work with is we want change. We want a cultural change, and hence we want a change in our business performance. So when I talk about what's happening in the people or the talent space at the moment, the biggest issue I see leaders struggling with is this, that the performance and productivity of their teams is not what it used to be. And I like to use the analogy that since COVID, we've all been schooled that we need to be much more humanistic in our approach to leadership. And what I'm referring to here is we've all become very empathetic towards our employees. Support became really, really high post COVID. We were giving people lots of flexibility. We were leaning in and very deliberately starting to show a deep and genuine interest in what's going on in their life more broadly, and wanting to make sure we could make accommodations. And we wanted to make sure people were okay. And we were all in that together, and that's fantastic. However, whilst we were going through that shift in leadership style, something else happened. We had some shortages in the talent market, and the Great Resignation would have been a term that many of the listeners relate to. and it was difficult to get people, and people became expensive. Now, because of that, many organizations had talent shortages in their teams. And that meant founders were rolling up their sleeves and getting in and starting to get back on the tools. We were doing the job again, and our roles were being compressed. But the other thing that happened is people were starting to get burnt out. And in fact, at the end of last year, across Australia, the numbers were about 37% of the workforce was self-reporting work-related burnout. Now, if we're burnt out, we physically don't feel great, we're not sleeping well, it's impacting our cognitive function, we're not being strategic, we're not innovating, we're not looking around corners, we're just on the treadmill. And socially, we're withdrawing. We're not connecting, we're not collaborating. And these are all really important behaviors, actually, if you want a high performance team and a high performance culture. So, in that context, what happened is many leaders lost their accountability muscle. And what I mean by that is we stopped holding people accountable because we were worried that if I have this accountability conversation with one of my team members, they might leave, and that's gonna create an even bigger problem for me, and I'm already burnt out. Or we become so empathetic, and we've got so much empathy for all the struggles they're going through in their personal life, and we've all got them, that we were thinking, "You know what? It's just not a good time to have this conversation. It's not going to be helpful." So we stopped having accountability conversations, but the empathy and the support was through the roof. So I like to think about scales, and the scales were out of whack. Too much empathy, not enough accountability. Now, there's an unintended negative consequence of that that's become systemic across Australia, and that is we've created a sense of entitlement around support. So the more empathetic you become and the more you give people, the more they want, but the less you get in return. So we've got that happening, and I see examples around hybrid work. It's now very employee centered. I'm entitled to work from home. I've got a sick child. Well, I'll be working from home today. I've got a new puppy. Well, that means I'm working from home from the next week, by the way. And no, I'm not coming to that meeting because I've got to travel. So I'll just dial in. Thank you very much. These were conversations that never would have happened five years ago, pre-COVID. So we've got this entitlement. But then what's happening is when we do try to have accountability conversations, because leaders are now saying, the performance I've got now is not what it used to be. And I'm putting pressure on my team saying, let's get back to where we are, where we were, because our employee costs are high, but our pricing hasn't increased. So there's a squeeze on our margins. People are wanting pay increases, but we don't have the profit to be able to give them pay increases. So we're putting this accountability pressure on them. And teams are just going, whoa, hang on a minute. You're putting pressure on me. I can't work that hard. I'm not working longer hours. So that's what leaders are actually really struggling with. So a lot of the work that we're doing with organizations is helping them with a reset. And I often have leaders ask me, how long is this going to take? Is this going to be another 5 years of cultural transformation? We don't have 5 years. I think we know that as leaders. I'm a big fan of ripping off the band aid. And there's ways that you can do that that actually get your team on board. And the headline is, we need to redefine expectations. We need to redefine ways of working in a way that says, we want this to be a great place for you to work. And we want your workloads to be sustainable. And we need to deliver these ambitious goals that we've got.
Wow. You're absolutely, you're so right. We also went through this phase. COVID happened, everybody started working from home. And I loved that. Everybody loved it. I also loved it. But somehow over time, I started seeing that it's just not working. And I kept asking myself, why is it not working? Things are still the same. We're still working from home. If anything, people have a lot more flexibility right now. So, and
Yes.
we should all be a lot more grateful, meaning we should all be delivering a lot more stuff. But that did not happen. Yeah, absolutely agree with you. So this is there are so many questions that I have. I'm trying to understand which one should I just go for first. Can you tell me, I understand, like the founders now understand the overall scenario. Can you have one or two tips for the founders so that they can at least start the whole process at least by themselves?
Yes, absolutely. So this is the rip the Band-Aid off approach, which I think most founders will resonate with. So first of all, we need to look at this through a change management lens. If we don't get our team to buy into the change that we want to see as a leader, it's never going to happen. So in order to get buy-in, the messaging is important, and we want the ideas to come from the team. We can't just tell them what to do. So here's some suggested messaging for you. It might sound a little bit like this. Team, last year was an incredible year and we achieved some really great things. This is what they are, and you can highlight them. Amazing work. This is fantastic. As we go into this next financial year, we've got some equally ambitious goals that we need to achieve as a business, and we need everybody to be pulling together as a team to deliver these. However, I recognize that the way that we delivered our work last year is not sustainable. And a number of you are feeling exhausted. Some of you may even be sensing that you're burnt out. And it's really important to me that this is a great place for all of you to work and that the work that we are doing is sustainable. And you've got the work life balance that you're looking for whilst we're delivering these great results. So, with all of that, we're going to do an offsite. And in the coming weeks, I'm going to invite you all offsite. We're going to step away from our day jobs. And in preparation for that, I'd like you to think about a few things. The first thing is reflecting on the last year. I'd like you to bring to the table our ways of working, either within teams or between teams or with our clients, that you think have been really effective. And what we're going to do is we're going to share those ideas and see if we can double down on them and really deeply embed them into our ways of working. The second thing we're going to do is bring your ideas around all the things that frustrate you. Where are the inefficiencies? What's frustrating you? What's not working well? And we're going to share those. And then together, we're going to work out how we can do things differently next year. Now, I have facilitated these offsites literally tens of dozens of times over the past few years, and a few things happen. Number one is there's some expected themes that are going to come out of this. So let me tell you what's likely to come out. Number one, role clarity. You will hear your team say, I don't really know what my priorities are. I'm busy. But tell me what I can stop doing and tell me what great looks like for my role so I can manage myself. The second thing you'll hear is, I don't know what Susie does and I don't know what Johnny does over there. Help me understand what everybody does. So, role clarity becomes a really important thing that will come out. Now, this is so powerful because if you can help people recognize what their priorities are, and I like to think about big rocks, and most roles have no more than 5 big rocks, you can give them permission to deprioritize other things or even to stop doing other things. So let's get focused on the things that matter that your business needs to thrive. So that's the first thing that's going to come out. The second thing that's likely to come out is accountability. And people won't reflect on themselves. They'll actually point to everyone else and they'll say, you know what? Johnny doesn't do his job properly, or Susie's unreliable, or if the marketing department would just do this better, then we could do our job. How do we get better accountability? Now, this is gold because if you can get them sharing, we need to fix our accountability practices, you've now got permission to fix your accountability practices. And that's actually going to be the game changer. So that's likely to come up. The third thing that's likely to come up is meetings. Now, so many organizations have meeting heavy cultures. And it's interesting because Unilever was the first Asia Pacific organization which created the case study for a 4-day work week. And they did this with all of their non operational staff across Australia and New Zealand. Productivity didn't drop. And the way that they did that is they got rid of meetings. They revisited meetings. Now, I'm a big supporter of a well-structured and planned meeting, but there's some key questions you can ask yourself as a team. Does the meeting have to go for an hour, or could it be a 20-minute meeting? What's the purpose of the meeting? And do we all actually need to be here? Probably not. What's the outcome of the meeting, and how are we tracking those actions? And is this meeting an infomercial? Is it just a one-way sharing of information, or are we actually using our time together to have valuable discussions and debates and make decisions? So I like to think about the concept of, for the year ahead, clear your entire calendar of all internal meetings and then start again very deliberately. And the last thing you're likely to hear is decision making. And I like to think about the concept of one-way door decisions and two-way door decisions. So, two-way door decisions is when you make a decision, you walk through the door, oops, that was a bad decision. Well, it's okay because the door swings back the other way. I can reverse that decision. It's worth asking yourself, as a leader and as a leadership team, how many of those decisions get pushed up to us because we should be pushing them down? And this is where we can start to create space for ourselves. But then there's one-way door decisions. You make the decision, you walk through the door, oops, that was a bad decision, but that door does not go back the other way. You're stuck with the consequences of that decision. They're the decisions that you should be making as a founder and as a leadership team. So that's some of the themes that are likely to come out of this reset. And it's just one day. You'll have the team on board with what needs to change. You'll have a plan of action. But most importantly, you've now got the commitment and the buy in of your team to say, let's do things differently. And then that's often where we get involved with organizations to help them with either building the frameworks or the training or building the capability so that you can embed accountability frameworks so that they're not punishment, but they're actually motivating and it's very much a team based environment.
Wow, this was so good. I feel like I got a free consultation from you. This is definitely one of those things that we are also suffering with. And I could totally relate. Anytime we even bring up this conversation, right? Definitely everybody starts saying, hey, I don't think he's working or she's working, right? Except for pointing the fingers at myself, everybody is doing like, hey, yeah. And then obviously the accountability part. That's the hard conversation. That's the conversation that the other person doesn't want to have, right? Like, oh, am I accountable? I did not know. I knew I'm accountable. And I think I'm delivering everything, but maybe the company doesn't agree, right? So absolutely, this was fantastic, Trudy. I genuinely believe that if you take care of your people, and if there are times when you might misunderstand them, and there are times when they might misunderstand you, but hand holding like this might actually make the situation better, make the relationship even better. So absolutely, I would highly recommend anybody to work with you. And if I can, I'll definitely work with you, Trudy. With that, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience? And also let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks, Nazmul. I think the final thing, if you're after just one more practical tip, is the way organizations are holding people accountable has changed. And I like to think about the shift being away from one-on-one combat. And I like to think about that as those really awkward one-on-one accountability conversations that we've all been avoiding for the last 5 years and changing it to being a team sport. So, what does accountability look like when it's a team sport? The key word is transparency. And let me shape this for you very practically. So, transparency level 1, I know exactly what it means to be great in my job. I'm really clear on that. Transparency number 2, I know what great looks like for every other member of my team. And we all understand the role that we play in being this high performance team. Transparency level 3, I know exactly how I'm performing relative to that definition of great. So that means I've got either the data or the feedback so I can self manage. And now I can actually start to hold myself accountable. So we're taking the pressure off the manager and putting ownership back on the employee. Now, level 4, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. With a framework of psychological safety and high levels of trust, I now know how everyone else is performing in the team. And the way that this happens really practically, if you can imagine that everyone in your team has a monthly goal, so they know what the activities or the outcomes are that they need to deliver by the end of the month. At your weekly meetings, each individual in the team would put up on the slide behind them, here's what my objectives for the month are, and they would traffic light them, red, yellow, green. Green being, I've done it already. Yellow being, I'm making progress as planned. Red being, I've come up against a barrier or a roadblock. Now, the expectation in that meeting is that I, as the owner of those goals or objectives, will give a quick overview to the team. But for anything that's red, the expectation is I share what the barrier is and I ask for help. Now, there's no consequence for doing that. In fact, it's an expectation that you ask for help. And I know that my team is going to lean in with good intention and help me. And that might be sharing ideas or advice or have you thought about this? We have a really rich discussion. It lifts my confidence. The barrier is no longer there. The accountability comes back to me, and I say, "Thank you, team. That was great. Here's what I'm going to do in the next week to progress that goal." And we go around the table, and this becomes a habit. It's a really powerful high performance habit. There's no consequence for asking for help. There's no consequence for being in the red, but there is an expectation. You ask for help and you make progress. Now, I can guarantee you, because I've seen this happen so many times, if you can get this right, accountability will go through the roof because nobody wants to be the person in the team who's consistently not delivering. So there's this sprinkling of accountability called peer pressure, and it works beautifully. And it takes the pressure off managers to be going, "Oh, I've got to have this awkward conversation, but it's not a good time." And what you'll find is it will create energy and engagement in your teams. So I'll leave you with that as potentially a future place to think about with your team. There's a bit of work that needs to go into getting there around building trust. If there's no trust, it won't happen. But to your question earlier, Nazmul, I would be delighted to help anybody with this if they're interested in a further conversation. www.talentcodehr.com.au is our website, or you can also find me on LinkedIn, Trudy McDonald. That's MAC, McDonald, Trudy with a Y. And please don't hesitate to reach out or connect. I put a whole lot of video content out that hopefully your listeners will find useful as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, do subscribe and hit that like button. Trudy, thank you so much for your time. And I hope everybody get to connect with you on LinkedIn. Thank you and have a great day.